welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. And I guess, Arif, to start out here, I'm just going to say these are interesting times we are living in right now. Would you agree?
Absolutely, I'd agree. You know, we have an ability as humans to sort of focus in and around what's going on in our smaller nucleus, if you will, whether it's personal, family, it's extended family, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is, Mike, I mean, there's so much going on, even locally in our own city, in our own municipality. Definitely provincially, certainly as a country. There's lots of interesting things going on with differences of opinion in the way that we react or act towards it, but go beyond our borders, and the world is a really fascinating place right now.
Well, we go from international pandemic transitioning almost immediately into international tensions in the world, and I got to think, and I certainly was thinking that even partway into the pandemic, how we turn to our homes. We become nesters more. The value that we place, the value here of our home goes up and up. I think I just hit my microphone there, but
and it's true, Mike. I mean, I've had good fortune to be able to travel. My family is of mixed heritage, so that has caused my parents right from a very early age to take me to introduce me to my roots, if you will.
Yeah.
And so early on in life I was in Europe. Later on in life I was in South Asia, and the world is a stunning, beautiful place, and people from around the world are incredible cultures and civilization and societies, etc. Beautiful people everywhere. That's completely different from the political side that you've been referencing earlier. No matter how fascinating the world is, though, there is still something that is just, every time you touch down in Toronto, every time you come back home, you're glad to be home.
You're going to quote Dorothy there, I was thinking. I was just waiting for it. But certainly there are some amazing places, and travel is amazing, and you and I both appreciate travel. But yes, the value of home. But I think with that travel, too, you get to appreciate the challenges that some people face out there in the world when you weigh them against what we consider our challenges here at home. It is quite humbling, I got to say. For sure.
I mean, there's a reason why that terminology has come up a little bit more frequently than ever before about first world problems.
Yeah.
But, Mike, interestingly enough, though, I think we also look locally at what's happening and wonder, why is this happening? Why are prices up? Why are oil prices up? Why are commodity prices up? Material, lumber prices, the things at the hardware store. Nothing operates. I mean, this is a perfect example in the world today that we're working our way through, is that nothing operates independently of the next thing. Everything has a ripple effect.
What's that saying? When a butterfly flaps its wings in South America, there's an impact.
A tsunami somewhere else or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But let's try and tie some of those things together in a logical way here. And certainly one of the first things that is happening now that will have implications, and there are things that have happened to lead to this scenario, and that is interest rates starting to creep up. And
there's a bunch of professional speculators out there, commentators out there who basically are cheering themselves on, saying, "See, I was right."
Well, if you wait long enough and say the same thing long enough, eventually you will be right. Yeah.
It's only been since about 2012 that interest rates went up pretty much. Right?
I think that the international bank rate is 2018 was the last time we saw a change there. And
this one's nothing.
It's not significant.
No, this one is.
But it may not be the last one either this year. They're saying be prepared for one or two more increases. But again, they will be, I don't want to say insignificant, but they're not totally game changing. And of course, these speculators within the media who like to look at real estate, and they're always on the edge of their seats waiting for any reason to say that the market's going to crash.
Yeah, listen.
It makes for a great headline. This is not going to crash the market.
No, I am going to be blunt just for a second and say to anybody who woke up grumpy this morning because the interest rates went up a couple days ago, saying, now I'm out of the market. Newsflash, you were never in the market if that's the case.
Well, if you were that close to the edge, you should have been, you're not quite there yet.
Our interest rates are near historical low levels still.
They are.
Even with a 0.25 percentage point bump in the overnight lending rate. There are a couple things that we should clear up in this show today, and that is that the overlay or the prime lending rate, as it's referred to, right? That rate is a signal from you know, policy influencers and legislators in terms of suggesting, you know what, inflation's going
Need
up
to get a handle on it.
into really high territory, and we need to get a handle on it.
Yeah.
How does the average individual interpret that? How does the commercial and industrial element in our economy, how do they interpret it? A little bit differently, right?
Yeah, and with regards to real estate, here's how I interpret this. Certainly we've had a heated market, and it continues to be a heated market. Much of that influence is buyers coming out of the GTA, the greater Golden Horseshoe area, buying here. Many of them are selling homes at a premium there in order to buy here. So a lot of them are going to be cash buyers when they get here. A lot of them have been cash buyers recently. So interest rates have no bearing on whether or not they're going to buy. The demand, the passion to want to own versus rent continues to be there. It may mean for some the difference between buying a house at $900,000 and now having to maybe look only up to $850 because of the added expense of the added interest, but it's not pushing them out of the game entirely. They're just going to refocus where they buy and what they buy. But again, the demand will continue, and I think you need the demand to drop off almost entirely before you ever saw prices level off or go down.
Yeah.
And we're just not going to see that through this. If
So
you're
Mike,
anticipating that, I wish we were seeing that, but
I do want to add some clarity, though, around what does the change in interest rate mean? For somebody who's on a fixed interest rate mortgage, it means absolutely nothing until you go to renew. Or to refinance.
Now, should that person be concerned?
No. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You know, like, why be concerned? Again, every dollar is a dollar, and I appreciate that. And so a quarter point change could mean maybe $50 on a periodic
Extra
payment.
a month. Yeah.
It could.
Yeah.
It could. It absolutely could. And I appreciate that, and I respect that. However, again, if you're that close, then I think you should have been looking elsewhere anyway on how to shore up your finances and create a cushion, whether that's a change in employment type, whether that's going back for additional certification to be able to command a greater income, whether that's adding another person into the mix in terms of whether it's a secondary source of income or something along those lines. But the reality is that if $50 is going to be the deal breaker, again, I think that family or that individual should really be speaking to somebody to get some good guidance on how to offset it. And I'm going to leave it at that. I really want to remain, I want to be respectful. However, if you're that tight, you've got other challenges that you need to be addressing.
And
so let's look at this though. The fixed interest rate doesn't change. If you're on an adjustable or a variable interest rate mortgage, it does change. And what changed is not your deal. If you got a prime plus or a prime minus deal, and that means prime being the lending rate minus an incentive rate or a bonus, for example, prime minus 0.5% or something like that, that adjustment didn't change. It's the prime rate that changed. And so you're going to go and you're going to be paying that quarter percentage point higher.
Yeah, your monthly payments have increased a bit.
What does that mean? Depending on your variable variable or adjustable, it's either going to change your payment today, and you're going to see it on your next full payment cycle, typically a monthly payment cycle, or your payment's going to stay the same, but that added amount is going to get added on to the end of your mortgage. So if you're on a 30-year amortization, not a 30-year term, let's say you have a 5-year contract, but the life of your mortgage is stretched out for 25 or 30 years, that extra quarter point is going to
added onto the
it's
back
going to be
end.
added on. The interest portion of it is kind of going to be added on to that compounding effect is going to be added onto the tail end.
Okay.
So you got to look at whether you're whether you're variable or adjustable. For some people, it's not going to make any cash flow difference. For some, it is. Again, you have to look at your documentation. You have to call your agent or your broker, speak to them.
Yeah, and if we're looking at people who are homeowners now, who've owned for a while, they've got a buffer built in. They've seen the value of equity increases in their home.
Potentially double.
They're not worried too much about this. Those who have just bought or are in a position where they can buy now, just the fact that they qualify under today's circumstances and prices kind of almost automatically tells you they're going to be in a position to weather this. The people who it will impact more greatly is those that may be carrying student debt, those who have lines of credit, who are a little close to, the that month-to-month, week-to-week type of living financially, those are the ones that are going to feel the squeeze from the interest rates increase, I would think.
Yeah, well, again, I'm going to suggest that, one, we are still in record low territory. That's not me saying that to make anybody feel good.
Yeah.
It's the what is scenario,
Well, yeah,
right?
for sure.
It's the reality. I'm going to suggest that there's probably an entire generation of people who haven't seen higher interest rates
than
the 2 to 3%
right.
range of interest. It wasn't so long ago that we were at 5%. It wasn't so long ago that we were in 7%. Yes, maybe you might want to look back to the 90s to say, when we were in much higher, like double-digit territory. The reality is that we are still in record low, and I think the danger is that people have become accustomed to this, that this is what's expected. Here's the reality. The reality check, Mike, you know this, I know this. We are experiencing right now artificially low rates.
Yeah.
They are incentivized by government policy. They are incentivized by a hesitation or a concern that the economy is fragile. For anybody who's thinking that the labor market, and I know we're going to get into that coming up here, but anybody thinking that, the jobs market is really strong and the economy is really strong, nonsense. I firmly disagree, and there will be someone who probably sends me hate mail about that. It's a reality. It's only strong because we're artificially subsidizing the market right now.
It plays into it for sure.
Yeah. So this increase is a signal of a little bit of caution that says we're really up there in terms of inflation, and you better get your affairs in order.
Yeah, and it's also that very moment that all financial advisors have been warning of, and you and I have touched on this show, is keep that bit of a buffer there, keep a nest egg for this very time so you can get through this. Because if you're living right at the edge and you leave yourself no wiggle room, interest rates go up a little bit, it shouldn't be putting you over the edge. But if it is, then, as you said, you need to go back and regroup and figure out your financials to a more, educated level of commitment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, rates will go up, they will go down. Over the lifetime of owning a home, whether you're paying a mortgage for 25 years or whether you're using your prepayment privileges and knocking that down to 15 or 10 years, good for you, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Remember this. There's a lot of marketing that's going on right now. All you have to do is read the quarterly reports from the banks. They're in record profit territory once again in the last quarter. This signal is also something that is going to trigger anybody in the lending community or anybody in the broker community to say, hurry now, act fast, rates are going up, buy now. Listen, that's to get people coming through their door.
Sure it is.
That's to secure some business now. Do what's right for you, and do what's right for your and have somebody on side who has no interest one way or another. Stands to gain by doing business.
So the takeaway for the would-be buyers out there who are thinking of buying, it's not the end of the world.
Correct.
It's not going to push you out of the game. It may force you to rethink that ideal home that you're going to be searching for a little bit and adjust that. And for those who own, you can relax. Your house values that you've gained in the next or in the last 3 years are not going to disappear in the next 3 years.
Exactly.
You're probably safe in both regards.
Exactly, Mike. Let's go to break real quick, and when we come back from break, let's talk about how has the labor market and how has wage, politically, how has the move towards higher wages impacted the marketplace? But we do have to go to break real quick. But stay with us on the other side, and more on this fascinating topic with Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. And Mike, we're talking about some of the changes that we're seeing, whether it's locally, provincially, or federally, in terms of policy. At the risk of time stamping, and I don't want to do that, but we're seeing a lot of change right now. There's obviously, we've had a few elections recently, and obviously those who want to get themselves reelected, whether it's their party or themselves, they will often do what it takes to make sure that they win over the audience, right? And so one of the things that, and again, and I think there's a balance between those who are supposed to be agnostic, partisan agnostic.
Nonpartisan?
That's what I was
There you
looking
go.
for. Thank you very much. They're in the mix there as well. In the last segment, we were certainly talking about the impact of rate. And how is that going to impact someone's ability to buy a house? My opinion, if it is at a quarter point, you weren't in the market to begin with. I say that with love and respect.
Yeah. Change the numbers too much.
But it's also the policy makers signaling, you know what, all that stimulus money that's been handed out there, you know what, it's given people a false sense of security, and we need to raise the rates. Now, here's the thing, Mike, and we might get into this a little bit later, but there was this suggestion that raising the rate might cool the market a bit, that might take the wind out of the sails of some of that, overbidding and that huge pressure on demand. Let's save that a little bit, because I have an opinion on that, and I think the answer is it's not going to. No. But we also touched on what we believe is it a strong labor market or is it not strong labor market? And there's been some changes in the minimum wage as well.
Yes.
So thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, it is a strong market, or so we're being told. There's demand for skilled labor out there that can't be fulfilled. We just don't have enough skilled workers. The question that lies within what you just said is how much of that demand is triggered by the stimulus that we're getting, and if without the stimulus, would we still have that demand for labor? Would the economy still be moving along as well, or how much less would it? Can it stand on its own 2 feet at this point? We don't know, because they keep putting that stimulus in place, and there's the fear if we do stop, then things are going to crash.
Let me ask the elephant in the room question, Mike.
Yeah.
If it was strong enough, why would they keep offering the stimulus? And I think that they wouldn't. I think any logical person wouldn't.
You also provided the answer to that, I think, too.
The political.
We've got an election coming up, so you've got that those bags of candies that are hidden under the desk that always tend to come out in the 6 months to a year before an election. Whether we need that or not, it still wins votes.
Yeah.
And that, in our country, we have a strong left, we have a strong right, but we also have that down the middle, nonpartisan type of Canadian that both parties are always fighting to win favor with. And that's when we start to see that we're going to give you this.
I am going to take out all of the partisan rhetoric, if you will. My opinion is if the economy was strong enough, we wouldn't see record low interest rates as long as we have. We wouldn't see stimulus checks going in. But for me, there is an anomaly, and I haven't quite figured it out yet. And there's probably some more progressive people who have figured it out a little bit. And that is, why are there so many job postings out there? The labor market, as much as we say it's strong, there's a ton of people who are not accepting jobs. They are not filling positions.
Well, a lot of entry-level type of jobs they're having a hard time filling, and I think part of the motivation to raise the minimum wage was to get more people back into filling some of those jobs that are going unfilled right now. Everywhere I go, I'm in the restaurant, and how'd you weather the COVID, and how's your comfort level going forward? It's not, well, we don't think we're going to have business. Everybody resorts to the same thing, is we don't know if we're going to have the labor to meet with running our business here. It's the labor shortage and
Mike, I don't think it's just the entry-level positions. I think that there are enough manufacturers who are saying that they're paying into the mid to high 20s, if not low $30 per hour, and they're still having trouble finding skilled labor.
That's a whole different thing. That's not skilled people choosing to stay home so much as we don't have people acquiring the skills at the rates they're needed in this country. And I shake my head, because I think those who would like to buy a home, who are working, even if they're going to be working at the new $15 an hour minimum wage, you have two partners in a household, that's still less than $60,000 a year. That's hardly a comfort zone to get into qualifying for and carrying a mortgage. I would like to see more people taking advantage of the free or at least subsidized education product that we have in this country. It's incredible how much the government will help you if you're willing to increase your skills or get a new skill. And then you have apprenticeship programs with most of the trades right across the country. You want to become a plumber, you want to become a carpenter, you want to become an electrician. walk into one of those union halls and they'll say, we can put you to work tomorrow. You may be pushing a broom for the first little while and shadowing, a journeyman, but within 3 years, you're going to be a journeyman yourself. You're going to be having full benefits. You're going to be having a pension plan, and you're going to be working for $30 to $40 an hour.
So, Mike, and I think you bring up a phenomenal point, and I think we again have become accustomed to hearing people tell us what we want to hear and thinking that there's some substance behind it. One of the latest trends and sort of catchphrases or hashtags out there is this whole commentary around the gig economy. You can back in the few decades back
in your day?
Well, I think just before my day, maybe in your day, there was this whole thing about burning certain garments, lighting a match to certain garments and saying, hear me roar, basically, right? And I
that's
think,
even before my time.
Well, who knows these days? You wear it well.
Our parents' Woodstock days.
But today's equivalent, I think, is similar in the gig economy. No longer do I have to be oppressed by this horrible employer who's going to tell me what I'm worth and going to limit my growth opportunity. I'm going to leave the workforce and I'm going to go start my own thing at home or do the gig economy, have multiple jobs. And the reality is, yes, that is trending. People are supplementing their income. In the last segment, we just said that people should be looking at supplementing their income.
That's a phase of life. And it should only be a phase.
I am fully supportive of supplementing your income. What I strongly want to suggest is that the gig economy will go through phases. It will trend. Once everybody's on it, it's no longer going to have the same cachet or the same financial impact.
Well, if it's not paying the bills, then at some point you're going to say, I need to get out there and get
back to the basics, get back to the fundamentals, and I strongly support
that people want to pay me for.
Look at these opportunities in the Red Seal trades, in the trades in general. I'm not telling everybody ditch university and go into the trades. I'm saying it's a viable option. Yeah. Look at it, and you're 100% correct, Mike, that there are subsidies. This is an area where I think subsidies great because that truly is an investment. It's an investment that says the government,
investing in human capital,
the taxpayer, is going to put a little bit in there for you to be able to go out and perform and add new value into the marketplace. And I think that there are lots of employers who are actually stealing or poaching people out of college and university, saying you can finish your certifications while on the job and we'll help you through your apprenticeship. Yeah. And I definitely think that's a strong thing that people should consider.
You tell me, working as a mortgage broker in this town for however many years, you've been at this a while, I've been at the real estate side, and I'm just thinking as we're talking here, one of my favorite clients when you first meet them and they first come through the door is the guy that comes in with the torn jeans and the dirty work boots, pulls in his F-150, because immediately, I hate to stereotype, but you have an instant level of comfort that this is somebody who's financially going to be prepared, someone who's going to qualify, and somebody who's going to be able to follow through and actually purchase that house. And again, it's not each and every time, but there's something to that. You have the guy comes in the pinstripe suit, it's not always the same. And again, I know I'm stereotyping, but I've found a lot of the pinstripe suit types are leveraged to the nines. I found a lot of the tradespeople are making a good living. So when you're talking to your kids about what you want to do for a living, but there's been a couple generations where we've just looked at those as lesser jobs, working in the trades, working with your hands, getting your hands dirty. And what's funny though is those are the skills that are timeless, that we need from one generation to the next.
Mike, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sometimes it's time to just get back to the basics, look at the fundamentals. And you can tell the difference between somebody who I meet with, who is looking for someone else to lay the blame with, if you will, or to give a reason why something's not possible, or to give an excuses why something's not possible, versus somebody else that says, listen, it's going to happen one way or another. If you can point me in the right direction, I'm willing to make it happen. How do I need to make it happen? And of course, there are people who genuinely have other constraints in their life, right? So the question is, and again, listen, your analogy is not lost on me. And absolutely not.
Yeah, and that's a big change that I've seen. I know it's generational, and I don't want to start pigeonholing people in that. But we used to, at least I recall, take ownership for our shortcomings a lot more than we tend to do today. We tend to more readily point towards government as they should be the ones that get me out of this hole that I find myself in. I don't know that that's government's job to pull up our bootstraps. I think that's up to the end of it. I'm sounding like my
I was
parents
going to
there.
say there's
My
some interesting
goodness.
pontification happening here on the show, and that's okay. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, listen, Mike, if we do nothing else, we might be saying what some people are thinking, may not be saying out loud. Here's my thoughts, though. We recently did see a $15 an hour wage increase as a minimum wage.
Which was overdue.
Long overdue,
Yeah.
and yet I still think that it's not going to have
Not a
the
living
impact
wage,
that some
though.
people think it's going to have. No, and the government will never provide a living wage. They will provide a bare survival minimum, something like that, but that's not enough to own a home. If anybody says, I deserve, or that minimum wage should be enough to buy a home, I think you got to have a different
there's a
conversation with
reason
yourself,
why-
some introspection. I don't think, though, Mike, it'll be enough. It's not similar to the conversation that I think we're going to get to around demand, and similar to the interest rates where they are. Why we're calling the show window dressing today is the fact that, careful on that interest rate. It's not a deal breaker. It's not going to be. If it is, you got other problems. Minimum wage, if that's what you think it's going to be to buy a home, I'm sorry, no amount of influence in terms of providing affordable housing. What's that whole definition of affordable housing? Again, it's not going to be enough.
Undefined, no.
It's
But
meant to say, let's sustain you. Now, please take advantage of some of these opportunities through retraining programs or education programs. Whether or not you have the physical ability or capability or your life allows you to be on site at work, or you can do something from home, because there are plenty of jobs and careers that are possible from home. However, it still probably requires the person who's looking to get into the housing market to change their strategy and make themselves
And they won't do it from within
in a
that.
position
And
of demand.
And there is a reason why there's a certain class of jobs that are and have always been called entry-level positions.
We got to go to break, Mike, though, and so when we come back from break, let's talk about some of the changes that we're seeing here locally, right here in the city of Barrie, regarding housing starts and housing availability, and well, what, if any, impact is that going to have on our viewers and us at home? Well, we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. Stay with us for more of Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif and I. We're talking about a lot of the changes that are happening, a lot of the pressures that are happening that influence real estate activity, that influence the market prices. A lot of those things we've talked about are things we presume may be having an impact, and they're having less of an impact than we might expect. We're in an election year now municipally, and that's another factor of our world here that can have influence over our real estate market and over a lot of things here municipally, locally.
So quick reality check. We just came out of a federal one. We're going into a provincial one, and then we're going into a municipal one.
Yes, that's
and
right.
Everybody on the campaign trail is going to be doing something to earn your vote.
Yeah.
Right? My vote.
Yeah.
So
this is the
anticipate.
morning after the big fight. I mean, we're all getting flowers. It's for the next 6 months. It's they're trying to win favor, score some points with us any which way they can. We all know traditionally that if there's this many election promises made, we can expect that this many of them will be held to or implemented in that 4-year term. What are some of the things municipally that you think need to change or be enhanced?
Sure. Geez, you asked me if I have an opinion. I definitely have one. Let's tie some of the show into this point right now here, in a nutshell. Artificially low interest rates are not and should not provide a level of comfort that says I can get into a home.
No.
I have to say that as loud as I possibly can, because they cannot, and
Yeah.
will not stay artificially low forever. So unless you've got zero balance owing on
Yeah.
your mortgage, you're going to have to calculate for and factor for higher rates, which means you're going to be paying it off longer, or you're going to have a tighter cash flow issue. So now is the opportunity, if ever there was an opportunity, to do something about shoring up your end of the equation,
for sure.
which is how can I command or make sure that I'm in a good position.
Good
That's
advice.
my goal.
I'm thinking of Warren Buffett saying, I think it was him, about when the tide goes out, it's when you find out who's been swimming naked. So
Absolutely. We'll figure that into the
I don't
equation
know
somehow.
where the tides are going right now.
It sounds
but
perfect, though.
yeah.
On the other side of things, a $15 minimum wage today is not a reason to breathe a sigh of relief, because the reality is, a few years ago when minimum wage was 11 and 12, it wasn't enough to make ends meet, and housing prices were potentially half what they are today.
Well, that's
average home price was around 4.25, just a couple of $425,000. Sorry, not 4.25, $425,000 just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Now we're up to $15 minimum wage, and
homes have doubled.
homes have doubled. That's not greed, folks. That's reality.
Yeah.
Why?
So people are losing ground.
Because the market will always find a way to balance, and that is that commodities are more expensive, logistics costs are more expensive, the price per fuel is more expensive. Everything is related. We said that right off the top of the show. Everything's related. Nothing is independent. So $15 an hour didn't happen and nothing else changed. $15 an hour happened. Everybody said, no, it's not going to change. All the people who wanted to believe that was a realistic move to make. No, everything did change. Now we're in election cycle, Mike, and you asked me a question. Locally, what are we going to have to see? My comment that I made a few weeks, if not months ago, was really simple. We have to stop talking out of both sides of our mouth. If we actually want to see things happen, as in more affordable housing happen, then we need to stop listening to people who will complain about every new subdivision that gets proposed.
NIMBYism is definitely an issue in Barrie that needs to be addressed, for sure. And that's not to say we totally ignore the rights and, to quiet enjoyment of their home.
Absolutely not.
Those who already own homes in there, but there's...
If we truly want to do the right thing and make housing available to more people, then we need to make housing available to more people. End of story. It doesn't matter who sends a letter to the council or the mayor or to the letter to the editor about this something bad and that something bad. I just read an article I shared with you yesterday, day before, Mike, around a whole parking lot full of prefabricated homes sitting shrink wrapped at a TTC parking lot.
I know.
Because there's a neighborhood group that decided that they don't want to have increased crime that will undoubtedly happen because of having more affordable homes.
So long
in their
as you equate affordable housing occupants with criminals,
nothing like stereotyping.
You can't at the same time be saying we need to help with affordable housing, because when the efforts are then made to do that, there's those who push against it. And I'm sorry, I think they need to take their lumps. Some people, the people who have seen their housing values double in the last 5 years, really don't have a monopoly on what happens in their neighborhoods, nor should they.
No, you have influence up to your property boundary. You don't have influence on the shadow that may.
And
or
I'm
may
not making any friends saying that.
And by the way,
there's some
shadow tests do
hypocrisy.
happen every single time.
There's some hypocrisy there,
There's a
because
lot of it.
I don't want a 10-story building going up next door to me. But there is a part of me that understands that this is the world I live in, and I have no control over what happens.
Well, you're also
there.
no longer living in the city that you first moved here. Whether it was in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, or 2000s, the place is changing, and everything will change.
It is because it is not because it's this city or this time. That's what happens with cities. That's kind of like complaining. My children are growing; they're getting bigger, and this. I want them to stay 12 years old because that's the ideal. For me, is when my kids are 12. No, kids grow, kids change, kids evolve. Everything changes in life, and you have to get over it and accept that things are going to change. Your neighborhood's going to grow, it's going to evolve, it's going to change too.
Yeah, well, so whether it's locally or provincially or federally, everybody's been pointing fingers at what the other party or the other level of government needs to do to make things happen. Here's the reality.
Yeah.
The provincial government needs to remove red tape, and the current provincial government...
Not remove, but streamline it, I think.
Reduce.
You still need checks and balances in there.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. but there are barriers to getting things done. How many times have you seen a property change hands, a sign comes up that says coming soon, and if you actually look at the date on the sign, it's been painted over by a few years
there's
because
trees,
they're still
roots
stuck at
growing
the
around
land
it,
tribunal or they're stuck at the OMB or whatever you want to call it these days.
So it's not just a matter of eliminating features within what we call red tape. It's expediting the process so that when the next step, instead of having it come 6 months to a year from now, let's make these things happen back to back so that the person who comes in with their application, there should be, ideally, I think the process could probably resolve itself for any application within a year, except for maybe a few extreme circumstances. But more often than not is, well, we'll reconvene 6 months from now.
So let's add a little dose of reality one more time to the conversation. My personal opinion, based on what studies I've done, is that a developer would be crazy not to rethink applications today. So when they put in their application a couple years ago, what was the current situation? What was the economy like? There wasn't COVID. What was the demand? People were still living in the GTA and not fleeing or leaving en masse to get to cheaper territory where they can buy a house for cash. We've talked about it a few times. COVID now played a factor. People don't want congregant settings. They don't want to be stuck in elevators with their neighbors. They don't want to be stuck in community rooms with their neighbors, etc. So there's a period, and we may forget. Sometimes people have short lives. Look at an election cycle. People have short memories, right?
They count on it.
They can. So we may see an influx again towards condo or communal sort of congregate setting living. Absolutely. But I think that the developers would have been crazy not to relook at their plans and their applications and say, well, listen, are we building what the market's going to want to buy? Also, with COVID, price of materials went up through the roof. So can they afford to deliver on the product that they
that's it. I mean, regardless of if your ideal is a detached home, new detached, or a new multi-unit development, buying something in there, it may not be a choice for many people. It's like that's the first rung on the ladder, as I like to refer to it. Let's just get in and get something, build some equity, and then next purchase or two purchases further down, then we can move into that detached home we want. The ideal of coming out of college, getting your first job, and then 2 years into that job with your new baby, buying a new detached home, that dream is kind of put on the shelf for the moment. It's more of a process of working your way in than it ever was.
Yeah. From a local perspective or a provincial perspective, because that's what we're looking at in the very near future, my personal opinion, again, is that when you elect your representative to represent your ward or your city, that's it. You got to let them, our job is to test them and question them at the door. Our job is to look at their material, their literature, decide what is a real promise that is going to be made and what's not, likely to be delivered, and make a decision on who you're going to have sitting around the table. But at the end of the day, we've got to stop interfering with the process, because we are speaking out of both sides of our mouth as a local community when we say we want affordable housing or we want everybody to have access to a roof over their head, and then we stop every single development. So I personally think that the people who sit around the table, I'm not saying ignore your constituents. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying decide that you have a clear conscience and do what's right. Yeah,
but stand out to them and do what's. Just remember, you represent the whole of area, not just the handful of people who are, determined to shut down a project because they think that their neighborhood is going to be riddled with crime once that development is built. Because I don't know that we've seen any developments in Barrie in our history that have, completely changed the level of safety or
we haven't
policing. No,
we haven't. No. And so there will always be the few who are vocal and the silent majority. Here's what I would like to see. It's
dramatic, and when you're making your presentation there or doing your deputation, you reach for the furthest, most dramatic elements there in your presentation. And if you watch city council regularly, as some people do, you see the pattern repeating. I think the person speaking doesn't realize they're saying the exact same thing as someone who gave a similar deputation here before, but it always is the same.
There's a common set of questions that keep coming up, or challenges that keep coming up. What I would like to see, though, we live in a world where we keep saying collaboration is the key. Get out of your silos. I'd love to see the different levels of government truly commit. Once you're in, not forget your stripe, but once you're in, you serve the people. I'd love to see these different levels of government work genuinely, collaboratively for the best interest, to actually solve the problem, not to score points. Mike, we do have to go to break.
Yep.
So when we come back from the break, we're actually going to talk about obviously the impact of this stuff, as well as we're going to talk about demand and all these things that we've talked about so far on the show today. How does that come together and address the concern around supply and demand, and will we actually see a positive change come out of it? And if you know me by now, I think you know I have an opinion on that.
And
stay with us on the other side of the break. We'll be right back with more of us after the break.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we've been all over the road here with this show, and we're talking about a number of things.
Hang on. That's not fair.
Hey,
do that again.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground here, but it all comes down to.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say it all ties.
Okay, but all over road sounds like we're disorganized.
All right.
Just because we are disorganized doesn't mean that we have to sound.
We don't have to tell everybody. You don't have to acknowledge.
There you go, Ron. But
there we are.
Ron, we're really going to put a third stool here.
Yeah.
You can self-direct this show.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we've covered a lot of ground here today, and all of these things kind of tie into two predominating questions. What will all of these things that we are seeing in the world, what influence will they have on real estate prices and just on our general well-being here as Canadians? And we've looked at international issues that are happening. We've looked at the fact we've got elections coming up. We've looked at interest rates making some changes interest rates that have sat almost immovable for a generation here are now starting to creep up in that. And I think at the end of it all, there's optimism there. I don't think a lot of these things are going to have any major impacts on people's ability to buy a home. I don't think they're going to cause the market to suddenly take a downturn. I think the demands that were there before any of this will continue to be there going forward. There's another interesting thing. I expect immigration numbers are going to start to creep up given international events that we're seeing out there. And how do you think that plays into real estate and housing? Obviously, more bodies means more people coming internationally is going to mean more
demand.
More demand, for sure.
So great question, Mike, and great thoughts all around. I mean, first of all, I always appreciate your enthusiasm. I know that it would be very fair for anybody to say, well, this is just two guys with two opinions. However, this is where we spend our days. This is where we make our living, so to speak. The impact that we have in the community is greatly tied to doing our research, doing our homework, looking at data, looking at historical events, looking at patterns, and trying to apply some logic to the arguments and how we interpret the different elements and the different sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Now I'm lost for a word, but the different elements that we see that are having an influence on the equation overall.
And then later pat ourselves on the back when we happen to get it right.
That nobody was listening to and paying attention to anyway. But here's the point. The point is that I like to apply some logic, and I like to look at some of the realism in it. Take out the emotion, take out sort of the sudden jumps and bumps and any of the things that might be a talking point on social media for a day or two. Get rid of all of that and try to normalize things and look at things from a really base foundational level. So in my opinion, the one guy with an opinion on this side, is that any of the challenges or any of the opportunities are all going to be based on things that have nothing to do with what's happening in the world today. It's going to be based on how well prepared you were anyway. So what good a shape are you in terms of a down payment, your finances, your credit, your career, your job stability, et cetera. Now we're talking about what is the impact going to be of an influx in immigration. And I'm going to suggest to you that I have a funny feeling that immigration numbers were slightly artificially stunted based on COVID because of a delay in ability to process certain applications and air travel or other migration dependent elements.
So there's a pent-up waiting list of people looking to come in. So.
And we also continue to have an aging population where we're going to need to replace the labor force. And so I think that certainly if you look at the federal level, there are some candidates who are already talking about that they're going to make it not easier to immigrate here, but once you do move here and you were a professional with a designation in your original country, your home country, and you're now moving to Canada, you should have right to access that, utilize that training and education here without having to necessarily take a much more fundamental job while you wait several years to recertify, if at all. Right?
And I think if we look at the type of immigration we've seen in the last 2 decades, a lot of Asian population coming here, there's oftentimes money behind that. There's, I don't think I'm saying anything politically incorrect in stating that. If we look at what's happened, Vancouver certainly has seen
just the numbers,
the influence of foreign money coming in, stimulating the real estate market. Now, with refugee or people who are moving here in a time of crisis in response, they're not moving towards something so much as moving away from something else. They're less likely to be landing here and buying that 30th floor condo in Vancouver. They're going to be renting for a while, a lot of them. So I see opportunity there for people who are planning to get into the real estate market, who are already there. And we've talked about the need, with prices as high as they are, to be creative and to purchase a property with a second suite, a second income from it. There's opportunity there, because a lot of those
I have a strong opinion. That word keeps coming up today. I have a strong feeling that people who are coming over from a crisis situation are going to be people who are fighting for their family anyway. When they land here, it's not going to be easy, but they're going to be willing to fight for their family here.
Yeah.
And so they're going to do whatever jobs are required. They're going to do whatever it takes to put food on the table, et cetera. And I think the data supports that. It doesn't matter what opinions are. Data supports that people who are new to Canada look at this as a land of opportunity.
They see opportunity that we miss here ourselves when it's right under our noses.
Absolutely.
We take for granted.
So the question was, though, what are all the things that we've been talking about on the show so far? How is that going to result in either a relief on supply and demand or not, right? And again, I don't believe it is. I don't believe that anything that we do here locally to say, oh, look, we just approved another 500 homes, it's not going to make a difference.
Not a major impact, but collectively, all of it helps. We're still, we've seen the number of homes being built in Barrie go up. We'll probably have the highest number of projects underway or pending than we've seen in decades here in Canada. Still, it's not enough to meet with the demand. But what I do in answer to that is, I am, I don't want to say confident, I don't get confidence from it. I'm reassured to see that our provincial, federal, and municipal governments have been paying closer attention to the situation, the issue, and are taking it quite seriously. And that, leading up to an election, I want to believe that this is going to be a big topic during the election campaign. And for anybody who's watching, go out to those debates and raise your question, make this a topic of discussion.
Well, and that's what I said earlier. I think you really have to take your candidate to task, and it's better not be a popularity contest, and if it is, it's our fault for electing that individual. And test them out, see how well thought they are. But I truly don't believe that unless we build a wall around our city and then flood the city with new development and new housing, I don't think it's going to make a significant difference, just like I don't think the interest rate is, and just like I don't think the minimum wage is. I think it's all part of that bigger equation.
These are ongoing realities that we ourselves, and if you want to look at any number of these things, and our ability to change them is far less than our ability to look inward and change ourselves in order to deal with them. I'm starting to sound like Tony Robbins here, so you can do it.
Yeah.
Get out there. Be a better you. And,
You hit me. I'm verklempt now.
I would think.
But here, I agree with that.
I wish I had some CDs I could be peddling right now.
3 easy payments of $19.99. I really believe that is the key.
Yeah.
If you and I want to take advantage of opportunity, I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but if we want to find an opportunity for ourselves.
We need to be looking through that lens that's going to allow us to see where those opportunities are and chase them.
Absolutely. Something I want to talk about, though, is this. I think that my kids are going to have to get used to this idea, and I think that they should embrace it. And so maybe this is relevant to you and your kids. Maybe it's relevant to our audience. And that is, I think it's time to embrace and respect the fundamentals, the foundational elements, part of the formula and the equation. But I think it's also time to shed some of the legacy thinking on this is how we've always done things.
Yeah.
And so I think
with
that
regards to housing, that doesn't work anymore.
Exactly. If my daughters are going to own a home, I think they're going to have to realize that they're going to have to save up, because remember, wages in general, unless you go out and make it for yourself, find a way to command more, interpret it that way, they haven't kept up with the skyrocketing price of materials, commodities, as well as housing inventory itself. So if they're going to buy a home one day, it's either going to come from an inheritance, not me yet, hopefully, or it's going to come from some other influx of cash flow, or I think most reasonably and realistically, look to a friend, look to a family member. The two sisters can buy a place together, not because they want to live with each other, but it gets them into the market.
Yeah.
Now, I
it's
say
not
that
a
with
long-term goal, but it's a short-term step.
A huge amount, a gigantic asterisk, a huge amount of a sort of a stipulation on it.
Yeah.
And that caution is this: this is a contract. Everybody has always says, don't do business with friends, don't do business with family. I don't think that that's necessarily accurate.
Just do the contract up the same way you would do it with a stranger.
Do the contract up. So speak to a lawyer, pay the $150 to $200 to get good legal guidance. Find your friend, find your college roommate, find your your BFF or your sister or your brother or a family member, and go in on the transaction together. But have a good lawyer who draws up if the friendship dissolves, if the relationship dissolves.
You got to look at every scenario.
You are well protected. It's worth the $500 in total to have a good contract drawn up that everybody will respect. But it allows people to get in the market. It makes it possible. It's not going to be your forever home, maybe.
Yeah.
But what it will allow you is to get in, and then not only are you saving, but you have access to these year-over-year increases that we may not see the same huge increases this year, but we will again.
Yeah. Just you're thinking of a good friend, their son, who I've known from this big, got into a house, encouraged him, got together with a friend. They bought a place up near the college just prior to COVID. Was talking the other day, we did an evaluation on this place. They've got $300,000 in equity there. Yeah, so there's opportunity. Getting in the door is the most important step. It will lead to a lot of other doors down the road, but you got to get in that first door.
It is too easy to look to the distractions and to get sort of sidetracked by the distractions. Speak with somebody, get somebody good on your side. Mike, we're gonna have to wrap this one up, but speak to somebody, get a good group of counsel on your side. Look at the math, put yourself in a good position, and you can absolutely take advantage of the marketplace and get in. We got to wrap it up. We got to go, but I've enjoyed this conversation, Mike. Thanks for it, and we'll see you again on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.